Did you know it took the Muslims 779 years to finally conquer the city of Constantinople? So before we get into this video, I invite you to enroll in my free productivity course. So whether you're an aspiring Muslim content creator, aspiring Muslim entrepreneur, or simply a student, this course is specifically designed to help you maximize your time and your potential. Click the link in the description below. Throughout Islamic history, Constantinople had been a city captivated by many Muslim leaders, standing as a symbol of both strategic and spiritual significance. Therefore, as a result, several dynasties had attempted to capture the city. Firstly, during the Umayyad period, the Muslims made two notable attempts to conquer the city. However, both ultimately were unsuccessful. The first siege took place in 674 CE, marking an ambitious campaign that showcased early Muslim naval and military strength. Meanwhile, the second attempt by the Umayyads occurred in 717 CE, a massive effort that tested the resilience of both the Muslim forces and the Byzantine defenders. But harsh winters and Byzantine tactics led to another Muslim defeat. These attempts also continued during the Abbasid era, as in 1782, a military campaign reached the walls of Constantinople. However, it was not a full siege, and peace terms were eventually negotiated with the Byzantines. The Ottomans had attempted to conquer Constantinople several times, such as Sultan Bayezid I attempting twice, with the first one being in 1391, and then beginning another siege of Constantinople in 1394, cutting off the city and forcing Emperor Emmanuel II to seek aid from Western Europe. However, the siege was lifted in 1402 when Bayezid had to face the threat of Tamerlane in Asia Minor. Musa Celebi had also attempted an unsuccessful siege of Constantinople in 1411 during the infamous Ottoman interregnum. And again in 1422, Sultan Murad II launched a direct siege on Constantinople. Despite the fact that the Ottomans used advanced artillery, they were unable to breach the defences of the city. Furthermore, Murad had to abandon the siege in order to deal with his rebellious brother. The city of Constantinople had been an imperial capital since its consecration in 330 CE. However, over the years it's been besieged many times, from the Muslims to the non-Muslims. Furthermore, by the 11th century, the Byzantine Empire had entered in a state of perpetual decline due to internal and external pressures. Internally, political stability plagued the empire, with frequent power struggles, corruption, and weak leadership, undermining its governance. Economic challenges further eroded the empire's strength, as trade routes shifted and Constantinople struggled to maintain its position as a hub of commerce. The empire's vast territories also became increasingly difficult to govern effectively, which ultimately led to decentralization and the rise of regional powers. Externally, the empire faced many threats. The Seljuk Turks dealt a devastating blow at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071 CE, in which they seized much of Anatolia, which was the empire's heartland. This loss crippled the Byzantine economy and military capacity. The Crusaders, initially seen as a potential source of aid, further complicated matters. The Fourth Crusade in 1204 culminated in the sack of Constantinople, severely weakening the city's infrastructure and prestige. Despite recapturing Constantinople in 1261, the empire never fully recovered. Furthermore, between 1346 to 1349, the Black Death killed half of the inhabitants of Constantinople. The city was further depopulated by the general economic and territorial decline of the empire. And by 1453, it consisted of a series of walled villages, separated by vast fields and circled by the 5th century Theodosian walls. though the fortunes for the Ottomans and the wider Muslim world were about to change with Sultan Mehmed II. Fatih Sultan Mehmed II was born in 1432 in the city of Edirne, which was the capital of the Ottoman state at the time. It is believed that at only the age of 11, Mehmed was sent alongside two advisors to govern the city of Amsaya. This was a custom within the Ottoman hierarchy for the future sultan to gain valuable experience. However, in the following year, his life took a dramatic turn, as at only the age of 12, in 1444, he became the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. This was due to the fact that his father, Murad II, had abdicated. There are various theories as to why this occurred, one suggesting that Murad retired as he didn't want to be the Sultan anymore. Meanwhile, another theory is that Murad abdicated so that his son, Mehmed, would get the throne when he passed away. Immediately in his first reign as Sultan, he defeated the crusade led by John Hunyadi. These Hungarian incursions into the Ottoman Empire had ruptured the conditions of the truce that was presented within the treaties of Edirne and Szeged in September 1444. This eventually culminated in the Battle of Varna, in which Murad II, who had abdicated, led the Ottoman army against the Varna Crusaders. Furthermore, in 1446, Murad II had ended retirement and returned to the throne, in which he stayed until his death in 1451, in which Sultan Mehmed II began his second reign. As soon as his second reign started as Sultan, he began making preparations to conquer the city. Firstly, he believed that the only way to be successful was if the Ottomans formed a navy. Mehmed believed that a navy would prevent aid from reaching the inhabitants of Constantinople. He also believed it would prevent a fight between the Venetian war galleys. Furthermore, in early 1452, construction began on a second fortress known as the Romeli Hisari, on the European side of the Bosphorus, several miles north of Constantinople. This would ultimately serve two purposes, ensuring a free path from one side of the strait to the other, as well as controlling ships coming from Venetian and Genoese colonies in the Black Sea. Furthermore, during the siege of the city, the fortress would be an impassable bastion, so that aid could come from the east and the fleet would have to serve as those in the western accesses. The Byzantine Emperor at the time, Constantine XI, swiftly understood Mehmed's true intentions and turned to Western Europe for help. But now the price of centuries of war and enmity between the Eastern and Western churches had to be paid. And therefore, as a result, most of the West were disinterested in helping the Byzantines. There are various accounts regarding the number of troops within the Ottoman Empire, but according to Rusiman, the most reliable number is 80,000 regular troops, as well as 20,000 Bashi Bazuk and several thousand assistants. It is also reported there were around 130 navy vessels. Sultan Mehmed also had 70 cannons a part of his army, though the main instrument was the basilic, which required 42 days, 60 oxes, and more than 200 men to take it from Edirne to Constantinople. The city was completely surrounded by sea and land. The fleet at the entrance of the Bosphorus stretched from shore to shore in order to intercept or repel any assistance for Constantinople by sea. By the start of 1453 until the end of March, the number of Ottoman troops and vessels increased drastically, and by the start of April, Mehmed left Edirne and set camp at Maltepe. Despite the fact that the inhabitants knew what was about to come, they still celebrated Easter. Meanwhile, Constantine, expecting an impending attack, ordered to lay down the chain that blocked the entrance to Golden Horn, destroying the bridges that went through the ditches and closed the doors of the city. Mehmed wanted a quick victory and little bloodshed, as the inhabitants would be future subjects of the Sultan. Furthermore, the Byzantine troops had been deployed in the defensive. And beginning on the 6th of April 1453, the siege of Constantinople officially began. The city was bombarded for 18 days, although Their cannons were recharged slowly, so there was no more than 7 or 8 shots per day. And it is believed that on the 18th of April, one of the first main attacks occurred near the Lycos River, as Mehmed attacked with several soldiers, with many coming from the Janissaries. This culminated in the inhabitants of the city getting involved in the fighting, though this battle was short-lived, as only within 4 hours the Turks withdrew. And furthermore, 2 days later, on the 20th of April, the first navy battle occurred, when 4 vessels carrying supplies approached the besieged city. Mehmed then ordered the convoys to either be captured or sunk. The Turkish fleet then reached them, in which a battle commenced, and the Christian vessels seemed to be on the verge of defeat. This was partly due to the strong tides that pushed them against the walls. However, they were able to reach the entrance to the Golden Horn. This highlighted the many weaknesses of the Ottoman army to Mehmed, as the Christian vessels breached the blockade with few casualties. It is believed that the European vessels were much higher and better protected than the Turkish vessels. Furthermore, the Ottoman navy did not have the necessary expertise to defeat the Christian navy. As a result, Mehmed refined his strategy, as he ordered the construction of a road of greased logs across Galata on the north side of the Golden Horn, and dragged his ships over the hill directly into the Golden Horn on the 22nd of April, bypassing the chain barrier. He then ordered a bridge to be built so his soldiers could reach the walls quicker. The Byzantines then sent reinforcements to the side of the Golden Horn. However, they were taken from the Byzantines' main defences. As a result, it became weaker. Mehmed deployed a massive wooden siege tower to protect workers, filling the defensive ditch surrounding the walls. Although the tower brought the Ottomans close to breaching the defences, the defenders destroyed it with explosives. On the night of the 28th of April, an attempt was made to destroy the Ottoman ships already in the Golden Horn by using fire ships, but the Ottomans forced the Christians to retreat with many casualties. On the 7th and 12th of May, the Turks launched a second and third attack against those defending the walls of Constantinople. However, both were repelled. The Byzantines were not going to surrender easily, as from mid-May to the 25th of May, they flooded and set ablaze the Ottoman underground tunnels. Furthermore, some sources suggest that on the 21st of May, Mehmed sent an ambassador to Constantinople and offered to lift the siege if they gave him the city. He promised that he would allow the emperor and any other inhabitants to leave with their possessions. He would also recognize the emperor as the governor of Peloponnese. Lastly, he guaranteed the safety of the population that might choose to remain in the city. Constantine XI only agreed to pay higher tributes to the Sultan and recognized the status of all conquered castles and lands in the hands of the Turks as Ottoman possessions. However, the emperor was not willing to leave the city without a fight. The preparations for the final assault on Constantinople began in the evening on the 26th of May and lasted a whole 36 hours. And in the early hours on the 29th of May, 1453, the final Ottoman assault on Constantinople began. The Christian troops of the Ottoman Empire began the attacks. They were then followed by the Abzaps, who were poorly trained and equipped, and then the Anatolian Turkmen Beylik forces, who focused on a section of the damaged Balachane walls. The Turkmen mercenaries were able to breach that side of the wall and enter the city. However, they were quickly pushed back by the defenders of the city. Finally, the last wave, consisting of elite Janissaries, attacked the city walls. The Genoese general in charge of the defenders of the land, Giovanni Giustiniani, was grievously wounded during the attack and therefore fled, which caused panic amongst the defenders. With Giustiniani Genoese troops retreating into the city and towards the harbour, Constantine and his men, now left to their own devices, continued to hold their ground against the Janissaries. Constantine's men eventually could not prevent the Ottomans from entering the city, and the defenders were overwhelmed at several points along the wall. The Janissaries, led by Ulubatli Hassan, pressed forward, and it is said that Constantine, throwing aside his purple imperial regalia, led the final charge against the incoming Ottomans, perishing in the ensuing battle in the streets alongside his soldiers. By the end of the assault, Constantinople fell to the Ottomans, marking the end of the Byzantine Empire. Over 4,000 people were killed. Mehmed II granted his soldiers 3 days to plunder the city, as he promised them, and also in accordance with the customs of the time. Furthermore, the Hagia Sophia was converted into a mosque, though the Greek Orthodox Church was given permission to remain intact, with Gennadios Scholarios appointed as the Patriarch of Constantinople. And it is said that this is the origins of the renowned Ottoman Millet system. You may be wondering, how did you react to the fall of Constantinople? The first to learn of the Ottoman conquests were Venetian and Genoese traders who brought the news to their homelands. They expressed fear, but it was not rooted in the city's cultural or religious significance, but due to the fact that their trade would be disrupted. The news soon reached Rome, where Pope Nicholas V was deeply alarmed. He immediately called for a crusade to retake the city from the Ottomans. His concerns were twofold. Firstly, the Ottomans were now free to intensify their focus on the Balkans, threatening European territories. The fall of Constantinople meant that 4 out of the 5 Christian major cities were in the hands of the Muslims. This left Rome as the last Romanian bastion of Christianity. Elsewhere in Europe, reactions were muted. France and England were embroiled in the latter stages of the 100 Years' War and had little capacity to address events in the East. The rulers of the Holy Roman Empire displayed apathy, as Constantinople was home to the Eastern Orthodox Church, which they considered heretical. In the Orthodox world, the Grand Prince of Moscow, Vasily II, showed little concern. This is due to the fact that in 1448, the Russian Orthodox Church had officially split with the Greek Orthodox Church, diminishing the sense of shared identity between the two, with Moscow growing as a new center of orthodoxy. The fall of Constantinople carried limited immediate significance for the Russians. Meanwhile, within the Ottoman Empire, the conquest of Constantinople marked a monumental shift. The city was immediately made the new capital, replacing Edirne, and symbolized the empire's transformation into a dominant world power. Sultan Mehmed II, thereafter known as Mehmed the Conqueror, undertook significant efforts to revitalize the city. He repopulated Constantinople by bringing in diverse people groups, from the Armenians to the Jews to the Muslims to the Greeks to the Slavs in the Balkans, and invested in its infrastructure, turning Constantinople into a thriving center of commerce, culture, and governance. The victory also paved the way for the Ottomans to concentrate on further expansions into Europe. With Constantinople securing their rear flank and serving as a strategic base, the Ottomans intensified their campaigns in the Balkans and beyond. Over the next century, the Ottomans steadily advanced into the Balkans, capturing key cities such as Buda in 1521. And as a result, they reached their territorial peak in the 1560s under Suleiman the Magnificent. The fall of Constantinople not only marked the end of the Byzantine Empire, but ushered a new era of Ottoman dominance, with their sights set firmly on extending their influence deep into Europe.